What is up, everybody? We are back for another episode of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Got another special guest with us this evening, as I'm being joined by former Philadelphia Phillies pitcher, former, gold medal winner in the for baseball as well. One of my good friends, Mr. Pat Combs. Pat, appreciate your time this evening, my friend.
Hey, Steven, always good to be with you, man. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, man. Always something to talk about. We are now into the meat and the potatoes of the baseball season. We're getting closer to All-Star week and everything like that. Elena's got this year's game, but we're getting into it, man. It's the fun time of the baseball season. It's the time where baseball kind of takes over because most of your other sports that kind of attach to it are finished, as basketball and hockey just ended up. So we're going to get into it. We're going to have some fun, and chat room's already going off, my friend. So
good deal.
So, I want to kick things off, obviously, when we set up the interview. There's always a couple things I want to talk about, and one to start us off, obviously, when we set it up, it was right after the Phillies and Mets series ended, and they had an interesting one. I got to ask you about that. Have you ever seen two players score at the same time? The way the Real Muto and Castellanos did a few weeks ago. That was an interesting play. I don't think I've ever seen that outside of what was it? Rookie of the Year when they had that in that movie. But
in the movie, yeah. No, it's fun stuff. It doesn't happen very often. It's probably happened a few times.
I think they said the last time it happened was like in the 70s with Carlton Fisk.
Yeah. No, it's one of those rare plays, and it's usually because one of the base runners is waiting to see where the ball drops or if it's caught, and the other guy's not tagging. So that was kind of the same situation they had, but it was a fun play, because you see those two guys around each other's heels and both score. So that was a fun play.
I'm sure the Phillies are going to be razzing Castellanos about that. Are you going to let JT catch you like that?
Right.
Are you that slow?
He was playing it safe.
Yeah, exactly. But the main thing about it was, the NFC, the NL East rivalries are pretty thick. I think over recent years, most of the newer fans, that have popped in over the last 10 years would probably think our biggest rivalry is the Braves. I always say it's going to be the New York team just because of proximity and things of that nature. Do you feel like the Phillies and the Mets are probably the biggest rivals that the Phillies have?
Yeah, I mean, this year for sure. I think it's a natural rivalry. I think back to the late 80s, early 90s when I was playing, and it was just a fun rivalry because of the proximity and the geography would dictate that. But, I think this year especially, Mets weren't that good last year, but this year they're playing better. So it's a great rivalry. And, if it's not Phillies Mets, it's certainly Phillies Braves, going back 30 years. But, yeah, this year it's so fun because both those teams are playing well. They both have a, really good roster, and I think it's going to come down to those two teams in the end. Now, you look at you kind of project ahead, right? Us Phillies fans, they like to say, hey, what's coming down the pike? I really believe that the Phillies can make it through that gauntlet in July. They've got some really tough matchups coming up.
We got a gnarly trip coming up ahead of us in July. It's tough.
Yeah. San Diego's playing great. San Francisco's playing well. You kind of look down the road there and you start to think, okay, if they can just make it out of July in decent shape, even if they're a couple games behind, I still think with the August and September schedule, it gets a little bit better for the Phils later in the season, especially September. So, some winnable series down the stretch there. But if they can keep it close here in July, I think they got a good chance. And then, of course, we'll get into, what's it going to take for them to finish strong. But, yeah, I like the setup, man. It's going to be a great rivalry to the end.
It always is. And the Phillies are in good position now. I know a lot of fans are hard on them earlier in the season. I say it all the time. They're never going to be 172-0. You're never going to have a team that good. Things like that. But when you talk to when you listen to Philadelphia talk radio, the fans are just always full of vitriol during some of the struggles that any baseball team has. But it's one of these things where you know, we got to blow this up. We got to get rid of this. We got to,
Yeah.
they were calling for Alec Bone to be traded, and in June. I'm like, what are we doing here? So
Right. Yeah, you just got to know guys are going to get hot at certain times. They're going to get a little cold at times. You just got to be patient, And they got, to me, it's the roster construction before all this stuff really gets heated up that makes a difference. And they've got obviously great leadership, in the dugout. But man, I love this team. I think they're primed to win it. Now, do they need to add some pieces? Yeah. I mean, you get to this point in the year, I promise you that GM phone it's ringing, right? They're searching around looking for the right pieces here down the stretch, but they put themselves in the position now to be able to do that. And I think you'll probably see some trades to strengthen the bullpen. But look, it's always which team can stay healthy throughout this run. It gets down to the end of the season. You and I both know, watching baseball for so many years, it's not the best team on paper that wins it, right? So it's the team that's playing the best at the end of the year. But they've certainly been a very consistent team, and they've got a great roster. The offense is doing what they need to do. And I think if the pitching continues to hold up, they got a good shot at it, man.
I think that's one of the strengths you have it right now. When you look at the Phillies, is the starting rotation.
Yep.
And you're saying that adding a few pieces. I wouldn't be shocked to see a guy like Ranger Suarez get moved just because he's due for a big contract. He's been one of these guys has kind of been like that fourth, fifth guy, but he always performs when he comes in. Yep. I think someone who's maybe looking to sign him long term to shore up their rotation, to have a guy who's a 2 or 3 in their pitching staff that can give you long innings and things like that, to potentially bring another bat in there, find a center fielder, maybe unfortunately like move on from a clubhouse favorite like a Brandon Marsh and find. I know a lot of fans are calling for Trout, but I'm like, no, that's not the way the Phillies are going to go. They're not going to go and take on another big contract like that.
Right.
I think that kid Luis down there in the White Sox, I think he's going to be a potential guy you bring in here. You never know what could happen, but it's one of those things where you're right. They still need a few pieces. They still have to sign Kyle Schwarber. I think that's the biggest thing this offseason, that the big question mark. I know both sides want to get something done, but you don't see anything getting done. I don't know if we're just waiting to the end of the season to kind of see how the chips fall. But I think if the Phillies continue to wait on that, or if they let him walk, the fans will give that front office hell.
Yeah, no doubt. No, he's a fan favorite, and look, they've got some of those veteran players, Harp and Schwarber. I mean, those guys, they typically play their best when the season gets tight, games on the line. We've seen it happen before, right? I mean, those guys are just that's the great separator. You think about the great Phillies teams of the past, and that's what happens, right? The cream rises. Those guys play their best in those big games. Yeah, you can't let a guy like that go. He's just too valuable. He's a great clubhouse piece. He's a great leader. So you got to hold on to those guys. But where I see the Phillies making moves, I think you've got some players out there, some bullpen pieces that could really strengthen things up. Because you're right, that starting rotation can pitch with anybody in the league. But you've got some guys out there that are going to be trade bait, right? You've got the kid from Boston, Weiser. You've got Kyle Finnegan with the Nationals. You've got Ryan Helsley with the Cardinals. Felix Bautista is probably available. Tanner Scott from the Marlins. The Marlins going to do that liquid sale they always do at the end of the year because they suck. But that's what you're going to see. And there's even a guy like David Robertson. I mean, Robertson was great for Texas last year, and he's sitting out there as a free agent. Hadn't even pitched. You're like going, okay, well, do we need, go get a guy like that can strengthen the bullpen and give you some good middle innings. But there's a lot of things that can happen down the stretch here. But you're right. I think they're going to play it safe. They're going to see kind of how things go in July. But I promise you, that trade deadline, when they're either in the lead or a game or two out, they're going to make some moves.
I think that's what the plus part is, that they're within a few games they got the lead right now at the moment, I believe.
Yeah, they do. But you got to look at, like any great general manager, they're looking right now at, hey, where are the weak spots, right? Where do we need to strengthen things up? And, your bullpen ERA is bottom third of the league, but that's where you're going to have to get stronger, and especially when it comes to playoff time, because that most of those games are going to be determined in the seventh inning on. You've got to have guys that can hold that lead down with this great starting rotation.
And that's one of the goes right into the next one. Like, you've been hearing a lot of buzz. Some of these fans. I'm not going to tune in until I see them hoist another trophy, things of that nature. Do you feel like the fans are a little out on this team right now because of the recent shortcomings? Losing to the Mets in the playoffs last year, falling short in the World Series a few years before that. It's this team is on the cusp, but they just cannot get over the hump right now.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's you want to position yourself the way they're positioned now. Game and a half lead. Man, if the fans are complaining now, man, this is like a team that could potentially win it all. I mean, everybody's going to always point to the Yankees and the Dodgers, but to me, you've got to look at, do you have the right pieces to make that strong run at the end of the year? And that's all you can do. You put your team in the best position to win when they've made it this far into the season and they've put some things together. Yeah, they've lost some games they should have lost, but man, you can't give up hope middle of the season. My goodness, you get ready to hit to the All-Star break. This is when the front office is busy at work, figuring out, hey, who can we move? What's it going to cost us? Yeah, you got to stay high on this team, man. This team is too good to not believe they can have a strong finish.
I think they can. I mean, I do consider myself a Nugget Delphine at time. I'm hard on my team, but it's just because we want the best out of our team and we know what they're capable of. And like you're saying, sometimes they do lose games. It's like, what are you guys doing? How do you lose that game? But again, the Major League Baseball season is an absolute marathon of all the major four sports. It's the one that has the biggest schedule, the longest run in my opinion. So, always going to be rough on them to an extent, but I think they can do it when it comes in. Like I said, if they get a piece here, get a piece there, shore up that bullpen, get another bat, maybe, if you're lucky. But I think that I think they are primed for a run there, and kind of lost Pat there for a second. So let's give him a minute to get back in there, and pop back in for here. You got to love technology when it gives us gives us a go for it. So let's give Pat a minute here. And Josh, man, come on, man, with these comments, Josh, what are you doing? Really, seriously, really, the Marlins winning it all? Stop it, Josh. You're going to really make me mute you one of these days, my friend. Mark my words. Yeah, mark my words. Exactly. There you got it, brother. Oh, man. Marlins. You need to get off that Florida kick there, brother.
Wow, what happened?
Technology loves us. That's what happens.
Oh, man. Start talking about some good things. They kick you out of here, right?
Right.
Mets fan hacking us or something.
That's just the way it works sometimes. I was keeping it going there for a second. I had a few laughs with some of the comments in there. One of our Florida bloodies was piping up his team there. But, yeah, I mean, I do think this team could potentially have a late October or early November run. That I know the Dodgers are favorites, but I do think that this team has the starting pitching and the bats to not just compete with them, but to knock them out. The question is, do they beat themselves? They have to not find the ways to, have the bats go completely cold from top to bottom of the lineup. And that was their problem last year in the playoffs. It just everyone seemed to go cold all at the same time.
Yep.
At the worst point of time in a season, you could potentially do it and wound up losing to the Mets. So, I mean, I do think they have it. You trade one of those arms. I am not a fan of trading either Painter or Mick Abel at this point in time. I think both of those guys are going to be studs here. I know Abel had a rough outing a few days ago or whatever, however that went down. Some were saying he was tipping his pitches. I think those kids are going to be the future of that rotation. Anything else besides that, You got Crawford down there. I mean, I think you have a few pieces that you could potentially move to make something happen. But they have the roster. They have the playoff experience. They should be able to punch their ticket for a World Series bid. They have to get over the hump though this year. They do.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, you're right. I'll take you back a ways. Remember, the '90s run we had, and you had that young kid come up named Ricky Batalico that just caught fire, and was an outstanding pitcher for us in '93, '94. And it's going to take probably a guy like that, come up from the minors that's going to, help that bullpen. But yeah, you've got some pieces. And look, when you talk about late season trades, typically it's a team that's unloading a veteran. They're looking for prospects, and so you're probably going to have to trade a couple of your decent prospects to bring in a couple of good names, a couple of good arms. But yeah, I don't think the Phillies are going to depart with any of their top grade A guys at this point. They're going to see how this goes over the next month and a half. But, those head-to-head matchups, I mean, you got 7 games left against the Mets. And so I think it's going to be that 3-game series up there, the 4 games back at home in September. That'll probably determine a lot, but you've got to make sure you're positioned well for it. So, yeah, I would just caution, let's not get too much into the micro at this point in the year. Let's see how this thing pans out, especially this tough schedule in July.
Yeah, we got, like I said, that July schedule's a killer one right now. If they make it through that and they still have, 3, 4, 5 game lead in the East, I think they might be poised to do what they're supposed to do right now. So
I agree. Yeah, this is the gauntlet point in the season, man. This is when the fans need to be on board and not get too caught up because they've got some tough series coming up. You've got San Diego, Cincinnati, Angels, Boston at home. Then you got to go on the West Coast, go play San Francisco, San Diego, come back and play the Yankees. That's just, or go there to play the Yankees. That's just a tough schedule. So if they can keep their heads above water here, I think August gets a little bit better. September is a favorable schedule, especially right now the way the standings look. But yeah, you just got to keep your head above water and keep pushing this team.
Yeah, well, obviously we were just talking about the fans, right? We are a special group here in Philadelphia. I think we're one of the few times that you've seen the other side of the Philadelphia fan base was when they just did that Netflix series on Trey Turner when he was going through that slump. How we kind of went the other way with him. We kind of was just encouraging him no matter what he did to kind of get him out of that funk. We knew we needed him.
That's right.
And, not every player responds to Philadelphia the way that we typically do things. Do you think is there another team fan base that is more passionate than us? And then who do you think is the most obnoxious fan base?
That's a great question, man. I think most passionate fans that I've been around. I mean, it's mainly the northeastern type teams, right? I mean the Yankees for sure, the Red Sox, the Mets. I mean, you've got some really passionate fan bases in the Northeast, and long-term traditions, right? That's to me, that's what you look for. Fans that are not bandwagon type fans. They're going to come, whether you're winning or losing. We experienced a couple of bad years when I was there in Philly, and they'll still come to the ballpark. They may boo the heck out of you, but they still come. They show up, man. It's fun. But obnoxious, yeah, that's pretty easy. I think the New York fans, I mean, either way you go, Yankees, Mets, they're just obnoxious as hell. And, when you go there, you just kind of know as a player you're going to be facing some verbal assaults, and you just kind of work through that. In fact, I got energized by it. I kind of played that little chip on my shoulder, and every time I pitched in Shea Stadium, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fans yelling stuff at you and throwing crap at you. It just kind of comes with the territory. But for some players, that can serve as a motivator.
I will always say the New York fan base is always going to be the most obnoxious. But over the last 10 years, or even 20 years, you even go back to the early 2000s, the Dodger fans are just something to despise.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just the way Philadelphians go. Like you guys show up in the 4th inning, you leave in the 8th. I mean, I don't get paying for money to see like 4 innings of baseball. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that's an elitist group of people out there on that West Coast, man. They just show up when they want, leave when they want. They're they're definitely not the most passionate. They're a bunch of bandwagon jumpers too. I mean, it's Dodgers are good now, but I remember when they weren't as good and people just didn't show up as much. And so I would never think the Dodgers could rank up my top 10 for most passionate fans for sure.
They're not like, and it's weird because the Laker fans are way different than that.
Yeah.
Like when we're talking about like inside your own state, you guys support the Lakers through the thick, the thin. It doesn't matter. It's purple and gold. But talking about baseball and the Dodgers, it's like, oh, I don't know about that. I don't want to sit there. Man, do they turn out for the Lakers? So it's really mind boggling. And that's why I say like. They're not on the level of passion as you have here in Philadelphia. It's I don't know. I may be biased when it comes to it, but I see what our fan base does. The good, the bad, the ugly.
Oh yeah.
And,
yeah. No, I call it the blue collar type fan. The Philly fans have always been super passionate. They love that team, and again, there's high expectations. Like we experience that, right? If you're not playing well, they're going to let you know about it, but they're going to show up. And that's the one thing I've always told young players if they were part of the Philly system. I said, look, you may get booed, but they'll still love you. It's almost like a kind of a family affair, right? You may not be playing well. They're going to let you know about it, but they still underneath, they still love you, and they're going to come support you. But man, when the Phillies are winning, there's no better fan base in America.
I think it's a special advantage that I think each of the four major Philadelphia sports teams have is when you got a home, not just a home game, you got a home playoff game. Oh man.
That's right. But look at the Phillies fans as a whole, right? I mean, Eagles fans are tremendous. They love that team. When I was there, man, I used to love to go watch the hockey games, and the Flyers were just fun team to watch at that time. But
yeah,
it was always fun to go watch the fights in the stands, right? That was always part of the deal.
Yeah, I think that's the special thing about Philadelphia fans. We will fight each other.
That's right.
Hey, something about our team, we gonna turn that other switch right back off, and you can be right in our doghouse. It's just the way it is. We'll fight each other, but we're gonna fight you too.
That's right. Yeah. That would be the fun part of sitting in, as a starting pitcher, sitting in the dugout. If it's late in the game and the Phillies are losing against the Mets, man, you could just watch the fights breaking out in the stands, and Mets fans will start to get a little cocky, and it would take about one fist coming 2 rows up. That would kind of calm things down. So it was always fun.
Oh man. And what do you think is your favorite rivalry in baseball that doesn't involve the Phillies? Is it I think it's kind of been relived over the past few weeks. I think so. The Dodgers and the Padres have kind of reignited that. With the I'll give it to Shohei. He took it to another level. He called his dugout off. He's like, no. We do things differently where I'm from. We don't need to do that. We know what it is. We still got to play these guys a bunch more times this season. We'll get them back on the scoreboard and wave them off after, he got hit after Tatis got hit. I think that's an underrated rivalry in baseball. I really do. I think a lot of fans think it would be the Giants just because both the Dodgers and the Giants were once in New York, and they both moved out there to Los Angeles. But
yep. Yeah, I think that's always been a good rivalry. Cardinals and Cubs has been a good Midwest rivalry over the years. Now recently the Rangers Astros has gotten heated up. But yeah, I think there's some great baseball rivalries. There's no doubt. And but man, Phillies Mets, Yankees Mets. I mean, Red Sox Yankees. I mean, there's just some great geographical rivalries in baseball, and that's what makes the game fun to me. You have that in other leagues, obviously. NFL has their rivalries and NBA, but man, the baseball rivalries they're so, rich in tradition. They go back, 50, 60 years, some of these cases. So yeah, those are some good ones.
I think you mentioned something like when you talk about the Midwest rivalries and things of that nature, like because you're always going to have, the West Coast rivalries, you're always going to have the East Coast rivalry, but I think each one of these sports does the best when you have teams from the Midwest that are just as good as the teams on the East Coast or the West Coast. It kind of unites the country into, the nation into paying attention to that sport.
Yep.
This past season in basketball, having the Pacers in there, having the Oklahoma City Thunder in there, having the Minnesota Timberwolves in there to unite the country.
Yeah.
You're always gonna have your Lakers. Obviously Golden State Warriors have kind of relit it, under the Steph Curry era. Obviously, when we come back to the East Coast, you're always gonna have the Celtics. The Knicks are always gonna be a hot ticket. Good, bad, or indifferent. But I think it's one of those things where you have those teams in the middle of the country to kind of really make the sport as a whole, regardless if we're talking baseball, football, basketball, hockey, even more so. When you have those teams that are in the middle of the country and kind of unite, the whole thing, that's when that sport really kind of gets paid attention to more than what it normally does.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And to me, that's what separates. When you think about the history of baseball, the traditions, the teams that obviously were close to each other, but you just had natural rivalries that developed. Even thinking like something like the Cardinals and the Royals. They're just down the street from each other.
Yeah.
I mean, but Boston and Yankees, and I mean, gosh, I mean, it's just fun. It's fun to think back that these traditions have gone on for so many years. And we still get to see it today, played out. So it's a lot of fun.
It is. Hopefully we can start seeing the Cubs and the Cardinals kind of bring back some relevancy because they're not looking too great right now. I mean,
that's right.
Yeah. I mean, we were just talking about Kyle Schwarber. He was part of that team that did finally bring a championship to Chicago. Obviously St. Louis has been good for a lot of times over a lot of years, have a lot of great players run through there. So you'd like to see them kind of get back to their winning ways because, I'm going to stay firm to that. I think when you have those teams in the Midwest that are exceptional teams, it makes the sport go even more. It really does. But did see your little message you sent there as you're talking about some of your background. Kind of wanted me to remind you something. Now it was part of my question, but your career got cut short due to injury. Now, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, we've seen a lot of Tommy John surgeries over the last 10 years or so. It's almost like a rite of passage for these guys that you're not a pitcher until you get a Tommy John surgery. Do you feel like that's like the uptick that we see in that specific one is because of the mile per hours we're seeing out of some of these guys? They're trying to get to that higher mile per hour to get there. Is it the way that they're throwing the ball? What are your thoughts on why we see this surgery more often now than we did 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah, it's another great question, Steve. And I think it's not rocket science to me. When you look at the average Major League fastball today at 95, think about that, right? 20 years ago, the average Major League fastball was 88, 89 miles an hour. We had maybe a handful, maybe 10, 15 guys that were throwing mid 90s. Now it seems like everybody throws mid 90s, right? So it really has changed. So there's been an uptick in velocity. And I think the focus on velocity, especially at the youth level, man, I've never seen this before with the amount of coaching and development that goes into increasing arm speed and trying to get kids to throw harder. And, my youngest son, who played 4 years in the Marlins system, he's now back coaching his former high school team. And he said, Dad, man, it's all about velo. I mean, these kids don't care about location anymore. They just want to light the gun up. So I think there's a lot of that going on. And then, of course, you've got much better training methods. There's no doubt. The kids you see today, I mean, look at the pitching staffs today. I mean, those guys are mostly looking like the position players of 20 years ago. They're built up, they're muscular, really good shape. The year-round training has certainly helped bring that about. But I also think that, especially youth pitchers, I'm talking kids that are 15, 17 years old. They're playing baseball year round now, which I don't think is a healthy thing. They're not giving their arms enough rest. You've got to rehab that arm, let that arm rest and repair itself. And so there's a lot of specialization at the young age in that. But look, the good news is the technology of surgeries has caught up. Like you're talking about, some of these players that even want to have Tommy Johns, I think it's going to help them throw even harder when they get back. I mean, I think there's a few cases like that, but there's still a risk there. It's like, okay, 80, 90% success rates now for TJs, but there's still a risk, so players should not ever look to get hurt to try to increase their velocity through surgery, but we're seeing that happen. So I think that's another piece of it. But yeah, look, the human arm was not meant to throw 100 miles an hour. And I think the studies are pretty conclusive around that. And at some point, when you put that much stress on your ligaments, your tendons, your muscles, something's going to give at some point. So yeah, I think it's just that uptick in velo and the body was not designed to throw it like that.
Yeah. I'll say this once, young pitchers, anyone that comes across this, listen, guys like Nolan Ryan are freaks.
Right. That's right.
No one can pitch as well as he did, as long as he did. And hell, they were even sitting there saying that the guns were off, that he was probably throwing, closer into the triple digits most of his career.
Yeah.
That being said, like, he was almost never hurt.
Yeah, he was a freak, man. And
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He was one of the rare cases you could say, like, his longevity, everything. Like, he's we talk about like generational athletes. He's a once in a millennial athlete.
No doubt, Stephen.
I don't think we'll ever see a guy like him again, ever.
No doubt. And look, he was a man before his time for sure, throwing that hard. He and Doc Gooden were cut of the same cloth in that way. Both just had those unbelievable arms. But the difference was Nolan took care of himself. And I was around Tom House. I know how Tom House trained him, and I went through some of that towards the end of my career. I trained with Gus Heffling for my body, but I picked up a lot of Nolan's habits. He produced that pitcher's Bible and said, "Hey, here's how I did it." And Nolan would spend 2 hours after his starts, going back in and lifting weights and getting that shoulder capsule tightened back up after he threw, for 130, 140 pitches. That was kind of the thing back in the day, right? I mean, that Nolan was just getting warmed up after 80 pitches. But yeah, that's just a different time period. But look, I think the training methods, man, there's no doubt we've learned so much from, the training and especially around, trying to keep the arm healthy. That's gotten so much better for these pitchers. That's why you're seeing these high velos. But again, it comes with risk. I mean, think about this for a moment. Think about, you've got major league pitchers throwing 100 miles an hour with 92, 93 mile an hour sliders. I mean, that's just mind boggling, right? It's like, the arm was not meant to do that. And so, yeah, it just takes a lot of, the training methods, the development methods, so much better today. But Nolan, he wrote the book, man. He was the guy that proved it. If you took care of your body, you could pitch into your, well into your 40s if you didn't have some, career-ending type of injury. And look, I had a couple of spurs in my elbow, and back then they had to cut your elbow open to get to the spurs, and that's what did me in. Today they'll do they'll scope that elbow, they'll get that spur cleaned up. You're back pitching in 2 or 3 months. It's so different now from the surgical technology standpoint to get these guys back on the field.
Yeah, you just hit a bunch of them on the head. Like, Nolan wouldn't last in today's world. He'd be getting in fights with his managers. Like, I'm just getting warmed up. 75 pitches. I'm good. I still got another 40 pitches. If you get back in that dugout. The medical side of things, it's like we're so far advanced with it, and you're right. Just we see it all the times. Like, something we thought would be career enders or end guys' seasons. Half the time they're wind up back in the lineup. Within a month and a half, 2 months. So it's like there's a lot of things that change, and some of it's for the good, some of it's for the bad. Going to get into this next one. Obviously, the big news this season was the Major League Baseball decided, post-mortem to remove Pete Rose's ban. I've had a problem with this from the beginning, because not only did they throw Pete in there, they also took Shoeless Joe Jackson off the ban list.
Yeah.
which is I think a lot of people felt that was way, 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 way overdue. My personal opinion on this one, and then I'll let you touch on this one, is if I'm the Rose family, I don't accept it for one bit. You've had, I think there was an interview he did before he died that there's 14 items of his in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, but they wouldn't put him on the ballot. I have a problem with this. This is just trying to get more people to kind of cheerlead. Okay, they're letting him in this year. This could have been done at any point in time over the last 10 years. Waiting till the man's dead to not even have him enjoy it, have his family enjoy it, etc. is beyond criminal. Beyond what they did to Pete is mind-boggling to me, because we already know there's more than a handful of guys that are in right now that have tested positive for steroids, have done steroids, things of that nature. We want to get all on our high horse. Like, listen, it's the Hall of Fame. We know what they did as baseball players. It's not the hall of who are the best children to come through the game.
Yeah.
It's not a popularity contest. It's not. It's there's so many different things that I have an issue with, that I just think the Major League Baseball just did this whole thing all wrong to Pete and Joe. Yeah.
It's a tough call, Steven. I mean, look, I met Pete, and did a couple of card signing shows with him. He was a different dude, man. He could rub people the wrong way. And I think, when you think about the criteria to get into the Hall, that was probably the biggest thing, is the writers I don't think were ever going to let Pete in, even if he had been eligible, just because of the way he treated some of those folks. But yeah, I think ultimately Manfred did the right thing, but could it have been done sooner when Pete was alive? No doubt. But you also, I think, you got the baseball purists that were on the side of, look, we all knew you could never cross that line of betting on games when you were a player or a manager or a coach. You just couldn't do that, right? And they were adamant. I mean, we every spring training they'd have the MLB guys come in and say, look, here's the things that you absolutely cannot do. This will disqualify you from the game. And they emphasize that every spring. And unfortunately for Pete, I think it was pretty much proven out that he did that. He crossed the line. Now, late in life, can you say, hey, we're going to have mercy on this guy because of the level of play and because of the player he was and what he added to the game? Could we provide some mercy and grace in that situation? And I say, yeah, you could have done that. But I think there were a lot of baseball purists that really had a tough time with what he did. And so, look, I think it's good now. I think, I saw pictures of the family celebrating the fact that Manfred did it. I think that's good. The family can celebrate, even though obviously Pete's gone. But that's a tough call. I would not have wanted to been in the commissioner's shoes to have to make that call when Pete was still alive. That was a tough one.
See, here's my thing with this. Like, obviously, it is wrong. It is wrong. It doesn't matter on what level, because you're seeing it happen in other sports now, because how much sports betting has gone. It's not just this, this thing. And we're seeing, guys get suspended because they're betting on games. We even see it cross the lines to even combat sports, where you're seeing coaches and athletes are also, having conversation with booking companies and things of that nature.
Right.
Because, this athlete's injured, let's, I'm going to bet against my guy because he's going in there with a blown out knee and he's about to have a fight. That is integrity of the game. This is something that we talk about. Now, what Pete did was wrong, but I also think he was very adamant, and it was also proven that he didn't bet against his team, nor did he put his team in a position to lose during that time. He was always Reds. I get that. Doesn't make it any less wrong. He still wasn't destroying the integrity of the competition of the sport, which is, do you punish him? Absolutely, you punish him, but to do it for as long as you did and waiting till after he passed, I think is a disservice to all of us.
Yeah,
you took something away. Not only did you take something away from Pete, the family, you took something away from the game because you needed to celebrate that man. You do.
Yeah, all great points. Yeah. All great points, Stephen. And look, I think there's people on both sides that have those great arguments, great points, and it pains your heart, to know that guy did so much for the game as a player and brought so much energy. And he was a guy that people, even if you were against the Reds. You came to watch those games because of Charlie Hustle. You love to watch the way he approached the game, the way he played the game, even as a coach and a manager. I mean, it'd be hard pressed to find somebody that was more competitive than Pete Rose, and I think that's ultimately what probably caused that. And you're right. Look, he only bet on his team, but again, from that standpoint, he knew some things internally inside the game that not the average fan didn't know. So when you talk about the sports betting and trying to take advantage of things that as a manager versus what the common person didn't know, I think that's the line that he crossed that he just should not have done. And so, but I agree with you. I think you're right. I think there should have been a ban for a certain amount of years, and then you have a chance to reinstate it. And look, I don't think Pete did himself any favors either. I think if he would have come, if he'd have come to the table, Stephen, and said, "Look, I screwed up, man. I messed up. Would you guys forgive me? Would you reinstate me?" I think if he would have come to the table and done that, there would have been an opportunity for him to get reinstated.
Yeah, I think he did it in a way where he still wasn't going to get to the point to have that conversation. He was, whether it be ego, whatever, just as you said, like he just rubs people the wrong way sometimes. I get that. Sometimes we're set in our ways, and this is how we go about X thing or B thing. Not necessarily the best thing for us or even people around us, but there's no doubt that he is arguably, as you said, probably one of the most competitive athletic guys that we've probably seen in sports. I think you'd be very hard pressed in baseball, let alone in any of the other major sports that we have here in this world, to find someone who was more competitive than Pete. But that's going to go right into the next one where you'd already touched on it. Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame has a problem. And I've been sitting there saying it's not just baseball. Yeah. The fact that we're still relying on sports writers to vote in professional athletes, I have a problem with. I've been talking about it with NFL players, with players from other sports. I do feel like, should they have a vote, a say? Yes. But not the number where they can discount a guy because he was mean to him in an interview or he wouldn't give him. That's the problem I have.
Yep.
Like, I think it should be conducted of several different things. We should have, one, former Hall of Famers. Hall of Fame baseball players should have a vote. They should absolutely have a vote. Actually, their vote should count for 5 votes. Because they're Hall of Famers. They know what a Hall of Fame player looks like.
Right.
I think current players should also have it. I think also, people involved in baseball, not the commissioner or anything like that, but, your fellow players, your fellow alumni have a vote. But to sit there and live in the day and age we have and still have sports writer saying who is in and who is out, I have an issue with. Hell, even the fans should have a say over sports writers sometimes. And yes, us fans are going to be biased at times. But listen, most of us look at the game with their eyes and listen. That, I hate that SOB, but god damn, can he play?
Yeah. Hey, 100% agree with you, Steve. You're not going to get any argument from me on that. I mean, I don't know how that system got started in the first place, where the sports writers were the only ones that got the votes. I mean, who came up with that system? That's just terribly flawed, because you're exactly right. I played with some players that did not like talking to sports writers. In fact, they would just almost ignore them. And you can't tell me that a sports writer who's trying to do his job, I get it, but he's not going to have biases against that particular player if he doesn't like him personally. I mean, that happens all the time. I mean, that's just absurd. So, yeah, I mean, to not have a system where you've got some type of a point system where it's former players, it's Hall of Famers, it's, there's got to be some type of a committee or board made up of people in the game that know the game the best. And absolutely agree with you that it should not be sports writers. If you want to give them a half a vote or a quarter of a vote, fine. But yeah, this system's got to change. There's no doubt about it. And to me, if you simply assign values to the on-field play, and if you want to put some value to the player's personality or what he brought to the game, the kind of the variables that he brought, from a leadership perspective or whatever else you want to put as criteria, man, I think that's fine too. But yeah, I mean, to put this in the hands of sports writers only, then you look. I mean, look at what happens. On the veterans committee, right? You don't even have sports writers on the veterans committee. So that's players, managers, executives no longer in the game. But I mean, those are the guys that look at the players who didn't make it after 15 tries, and now they've got a veteran committee that can come up and say, "Yeah, we'll take a look at it." And if they can get off a 16-member panel, get 75% of the votes, there's no sports writers involved in that, and that's where they've corrected some of the wrongs. But man, why screw it up to begin with, right? Yeah. So I'm totally 100% with you on that.
And you just touched on another point that is with inside of that. I don't ever think there should be ever a class in any of the sports at this point in time, because I think there's a backlog of athletes who should be in there. There should never be a class that has less than 6 athletes in it moving forward. Should not. I shouldn't see a Hall of Fame class that consists of 2 people or 1 person. That is disgusting.
Yeah. Hey, I think we could from the Steren Rychel show, we can now say we're going to put together a group of fans who will come up with the right criteria for Hall of Fame. So we probably need some of those mathematicians, those engineers who come up with the right formula. But let's make that a point, man. You got to get on that show now. You got to push this thing forward.
But you also touched on something too. Like sometimes it's not necessarily the numbers. Like we talk about it. Like injury comes in. We see it in other sports. Like where Conor McGregor's been the biggest star in the world. He hasn't been an effective athlete in almost 10 years at this point in time, but the effect that he had on combat sports brought in X amount of people, if you do something to the game like that, like I think when everything's Shohei Ohtani is going to be a shoe-in at some point in time because of effect on the game, regardless if you think he's the best pitcher ever. Everyone, like when we were talking about it, he could be the next Babe Ruth. I'm like, well, let's just hold on a second. He's an amazing athlete. Don't get me wrong, but when you're sitting there putting him in the conversation with Babe Ruth was an excellent pitcher before he was an excellent hitter. Let's remember that. So not to take anything away from Shohei, but, we were already talking about injuries and things of that nature. I don't think we're probably going to see him pitch a whole lot the rest of this season. But that being said, he's still an amazing athlete. And I think being that effect that he has on baseball, the growth he's bringing into the sport, the international support that he's bringing in, I think you can't turn your head away at that.
That's right.
So it's like there's some of those things, like I think guys like that may be tweeners, but the effect they had on their teammates, the fans, etc., should be taken into account too. Whether you call that a different wing of the Hall of Fame or something, fine. But don't disclude them. Don't have writers talk, he didn't have 3,000 hits. I'm not looking at him. Like, What are we talking about? Like I'm not holding specific numbers. If he's gotten over that number, then he should be in there. But it's one of these things where there's so many different variables to it. I get it. It's a tough conversation to have. But I think baseball should really take a hard look at this. I know writers are going to be upset. I get it. We're gonna give you something to write about for the next 100 years. Relax, guys.
Yeah, right.
Y'all had the run at it. We have a severe backlog going on over here of guys that gave their lives to this sport, not just as players, but as coaches, but as teaching kids today, etc. You cannot take people away just because you didn't like their numbers or you didn't like who they were as a person, etc. I don't think that should exclude you from some of these conversations.
Yeah, no doubt. Look, there's only so many Tyler Kepners in the world, the Philly kid who's made it big as a sports writer. I trust Tyler, but, how many Tyler Kepners are there out there that are going to be totally unbiased and just look simply at the player and what they did? And, I mean, think about this, even the criteria, right? Like you got to play 10 years in the MLB to be eligible. Well, think about maybe who is the current player today that you would consider a Hall of Fame shoe-in at the end of his career? Is there somebody – I mean, obviously Shohei comes to mind, right? He's probably a potential Hall of Famer.
I think Harper gets it right now despite not having a World Series. I think his effect, his growth, how he plays the game, how people react to him, puts him in that conversation. I do think we got a couple potential Hall of Famers on this team.
Yeah.
And we're talking, and we were already talking that we from the previous World Series run that the Phillies had, we're still waiting for a couple of those guys to get in.
Right.
Jimmy Rollins is still waiting to get in. Chase Utley's still waiting to get in. Ryan Howard, who injury without a doubt affected the end of his career. I mean, those are three guys just come to mind off the top of my bat who should be in the Hall of Fame right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and think about this. I mean, like Derek Jeter, if there was somebody that should be a unanimous selection to the Hall of Fame, right? 99.7%. So there was some idiotic writer out there who didn't think Derek Jeter was a Hall of Famer, right? Or Chipper Jones. Chipper Jones got 97% of the vote.
Oh, man.
Who are the two or three?
There's some guys down in Atlanta that absolutely listen. I disdain Atlanta. Don't get me wrong. There's a couple guys down there in Atlanta that should already be in the Hall of Fame. It's not a question. Andrew Jones, David Justice. There's some of these guys that deserve to be in there.
Yep, exactly. So they got to right those wrongs. They got to come up with a better system. There's just a better way to do this. So, and you and I are on the same page 100%. And I hope they come up with a different system because, this is a thing when you think about the greatness of players that ought to be celebrated for the rest of their lives, the legacy that they have with becoming a Hall of Famer. And we've got like one of the worst systems in the world to figure this out. That's got to change.
I mean, I talk about it all the time when I'm talking to the football guys, man. Like some of the guys that have already been in don't have as good numbers as some of the guys that played 10 years before them. Like, I'm like, wait, how is that guy a first ballot and the guy that has better numbers, who's won a championship, etc., isn't even on the ballot? I'm like, what are we talking about?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like, think about this year. I mean, Ichiro, he ought to be an absolute unanimous selection, right?
Without a doubt.
CC Sabathia, he ought to come close. He probably not unanimous, but he ought to come close. Here's a guy I'm a little concerned about, like Dustin Pedroia, right? I mean, he had a Hall of Fame career. It didn't finish well because of injury, but that guy was the best player in baseball for a few years, right? So, but I'm not so sure that the sports writers are smart enough to put that guy in first ballot.
It's again, I'm going to beat on this drum. I'm going to yell from the tallest mountain. Yes, I'm a media guy. I'm technically, a sports writer, so to speak. But listen, dude, I don't feel that we should let these guys have this much control. Baseball, football, basketball, hockey, you should not be leaving it to media members.
Right. Give a vote.
The best players in these sports. Yeah. It's. I don't know. As you're right, I don't know who came up with this. It's bad idea. It was without a doubt cooked up from the sports media.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, listen. We're not still running on 2-cylinder engines these days, are we? Okay, so we agree that sometimes there's a better way to go about things to make things happen. Okay, so why are we not applying this to one of the more prestigious awards that should come to any athlete?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's mind-boggling to me. I don't know if we're going to see a change at any time soon. I hope that somebody with 2 cents in their heads has a conversation with Manfred, with whoever the commissioner is of your respective, professional organizations, and change this immediately. Like I said, don't cut them out completely, but don't have them hold that much weight. Maybe there shouldn't be a 99 percentile to get in. Maybe you have to just have like 95%, 96%, 92%. You shouldn't have to have 100% of the vote to get in. That is another thing that gets me too. Not just that the writers hold way on it, but that you have to have X amount of percentage to get in. Yeah.
I don't know who made up the 75%, barometer mark, but that's what it is today. But look, I think there's a much better way to do it. We're in agreement on that. Somebody's going to come with a better formula. When you think about, look at all the statistics in baseball we have. We measure everything in the game, right? Why can't you put some statistical, mathematical formula together that puts more weight on the numbers that they produce during their career? And you have some variables that we talked about that are around the game, the things they brought to the game. Fans ought to have at least a partial vote in that, right? Maybe 5 to 10.
They let us vote for the All-Star game. Why not Hall of Fame?
Yeah, right. I mean, there's a weight. You can put weightings on those different voting formulas. So, yeah, it's just a bad formula, and they need to fix it. But you and I agree.
Yeah, hopefully, one of these sports commissioners will wake up one of these days and figure it out that this can't work. This can't continue to happen. So.
Right.
Oh man, oh man, oh man. And as we get ready to wrap this one up, I do gotta bring it up. We were talking about it beforehand. We talked about Pete Rose, but we lost another great guy that is involved in the sport. Dave Parker was a special kind of guy in this sport. He was a fun guy to watch. Regardless of where he was, when he did his thing, he was also, part of the Oakland A's for a period of time. Like he wherever he played, he was a fun guy to watch, and it's a sad week when we see the Cobra is no longer with us.
Yeah, no doubt, man. He impacted the game in such a tremendous way. You think about the last time the Pirates were great, right? He was that era. He made the Pirates a great team for many years. And, I always enjoyed watching him. He was a guy that, he was one of those guys when he came to bat, you didn't go get a drink, right? You were sitting there watching when Dave Parker came to the plate, and the guy could impact the game in so many different ways. I mean, think about he never really looked like the prototypical ball player, always kind of carried some weight with him. But think about the athlete that he was. The guy could steal bases. He controlled right field. I mean, what an arm. I mean, I saw some highlights of him picking up balls at the fence and throwing guys out at the plate, or making those signature throws from deep right field to third base to get guys going from first to third. I mean, just every facet of the game, Dave Parker played it well, and he was just a great leader as well. But, yeah, you think about the great Pirates teams of the past, the Willie Stargells, Dave Parkers, and you think, man, we lost a great one.
Yeah, it's a sad day, and hopefully, the Pirates being as bad as they are, they're smart enough to know that they need to do a Dave Parker night at some point in time that this season, kind of move things around and do some type of promotional thing for him, because
no doubt.
He was a special guy, especially for that team. Like you said, that the last time the Pirates were good was his era. I mean, a lot of people attached, Barry Bonds and Bobby Bonilla. I'm like, well, there was an era before that, guys.
That's right. That's right.
But two more before we let it go. Obviously you sent me a few things. Now, seeing how Olympics is done, and then you have special things about baseball. How special was it for you? Being a part of that Olympic team that won.
Oh man, I point to that time in '87, '88. We played the Pan Am Games in '87. As part of that team, we won silver that year, and really nobody expected us to win gold in '88. In fact, the '84 team. You remember that team? That was, Palmero and Clark, and there were, Bobby Thigpen. There were some great players off that '84 team that won silver in Los Angeles. So when they were making the comparisons to the '88 team, they said, well, good team. And but again, we were all college athletes. We were, 21, 22 years old. But on paper, we weren't supposed to win that thing. But we went to Seoul, Korea, won the gold medal. Of course, Mickey Morandini, Philly great, was on that team as well. And Mickey was a role player on that team. If you can imagine, he didn't even start. It was crazy. But just being a part of something like that. I mean, I point to that. Having the opportunity, Stephen, to wear USA on my chest and to represent our country, and to be on the biggest platform in international sports. We win the gold. I mean, that's the time of my life. I'll never forget that. That was the highlight. I mean, I love playing for the Phillies. My debut with my family there. And all that. I remember those days like they were yesterday, but that gold medal winning team, that was the most special piece of baseball for me, just playing for my country.
And you're seeing that change. Like, obviously we're going to see NFL players be allowed to do flag football in this upcoming Olympics and things of that nature. Obviously, being able to be on a championship team, win a World Series is a special moment. But I think just as special to just the normal athlete is being able to represent your country and be a part of a gold medal winning team. Is I think there's a special quality to that, but just there's a thing about that I don't think that you could talk away or oh I won X amount of World Series, and but I won a gold medal. I may
Yeah.
have been on a crappy team, but I won a gold medal.
Well, I mean, you play professional baseball. You always felt a sense of pride playing for Philadelphia. And I wanted to be the best I could be for the Phillies and the Phillies fans and for the city of Philadelphia. But when you just extrapolate that to now, you're playing for an entire country. On an international stage. I mean, there's just something special about that. And only what was it, 25 players in the country at that year in 1988. Only 25 of us were able to be able to say we did that. And so. Yeah, special time, man. It's just there's something else when you put that USA across your chest and you feel like, man, we're representing our entire nation, and it was just really special.
And you're saying the word special time. I think we are in a special time in sports as a whole because a lot of guys that you played with and played in your era now are retired in a way, but we're starting to see a lot of nepotism in all across all the sports. We're seeing what Will Clark's daughter is doing for the WNBA right now. We just had Deion Sanders' son drafted to the Cleveland Browns. You were talking about your son playing baseball. We had Roger Clemens' son here in Philadelphia here for a few years. Unfortunately, we just traded him to Minnesota. I thought it was a stupid move. Just a note on that. But we're starting to see a lot of guys that played in your era that are, you're seeing their kids doing very, very well. The genes look like they're translating very well. Do you think it's a time like I know a lot of people I think it's a harder thing being a professional athlete's son, daughter, etc., and then go and try to make your own mark without sitting there saying, oh well that's so and so's kid, and that's so and so's daughter. It's a rough thing, but I think the time that we live in, it's a special time to see these athletes go on and the platforms they had. And a lot of times now it looks like that their kids are more popular than the actual parent actually was.
Well, look, it's an interesting dichotomy when you think about it the way you said it, because I know for my sons, they had that pressure on them to perform like their dad, and you would get comparisons, and so you've got that target on your back as a kid that you've got these expectations upon you because of what your dad did. So that's the negative side of it. The positive side is that kids, they grew up around the game. They grew up going into clubhouses with us. They got to hang out at the ballpark with dad, and so there's a lot of that too. It's the gene pool, but it's also the experience that they had growing up. They weren't ever intimidated. Like when my son got to minor league ball, he walked into minor league ballparks. He had been there. He grew up there. He wasn't intimidated at all. So there are some great benefits, no doubt. But I think it's for some players, they take that pressure and internalize it, don't know how to handle it in certain cases. I remember playing against Pete Rose's son. Pete Rose's son played in Hagerstown for the Orioles system, and man, he tried to be just like his dad in every way, every motion. He tried to copy Pete, and it was just like you could see it wasn't working. And so there's situations like that too, where you just go, man, that's a tough situation for that guy growing up in his dad's shadow like that. So you can look at it both ways. And for my sons, my message to them was, guys, I don't want you to be like me. I want you to carve your own path. I'm not going to do anything special for you. You're going to have to earn it, and you have to work your butt off. I mean, that's what I had to do. And you got to go out and compete. But I don't ever want you to have that pressure that you're Pat Combs' son, that you don't need that. And that's not what you need to be. You need to be your own person. So I always encourage that. And that was the message we talked about quite often.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough. I just had Sean Merriman's son, Justin Merriman, who's now a freshman in high school. And he's already got, I think, like almost 5 D1 offers to play quarterback. Obviously, had his dad's alma mater, and he just went to went to Southern California and did his trips out there. And then obviously, I was just talking about what Caitlin Clark is now doing. Who would have guessed that Will Clark's daughter would have grown up and be the face of women's basketball?
Right.
I didn't have that on my bingo card for this century. Not for a second.
I do know one thing about Caitlin. I think she even talks a little bit lower, voice than her dad. Her dad had that high pitched voice. Where I got a hit in San Francisco, and he was playing first base, and he talked. He was asking me questions, and I thought he was messing with me because he had that high pitched voice, and I thought he was joking with me, and so yeah, it was just a weird scene. I made a comment like, "Dude, is that your real voice?" He looked at me like he wanted to clown me, man. Yeah, but I've enjoyed watching Caitlin, and it is fun to see those.
She's fun to watch, and coming back there to Philadelphia, they made the announcement today. Philadelphia is going to have a WNBA team by 2030. So
saw that, yeah.
It's going to get more interesting now. They're asking for names. If I'm naming a Philadelphia basketball team, and obviously we're talking about the WNBA. Does the Liberty Bells not make sense?
Oh man, that's a fantastic name.
I mean, I've seen a couple different variations. I'm like, listen, Philadelphia's, we already know our storied history. Liberty makes sense, but Liberty Bells kind of works for me. I've seen it a couple times. A couple people different put it out there, but I'm going to say it here. I think that should be the name. We'll see what happens over the next 3 to 4 years, but we'll see how it all plans out. Good for them. Other than that, I think that should put a bow on this one for tonight, Pat. I really do appreciate the time. We definitely gotta bring you back on here. Our show owner Scott, he has a book, and he heard through the grapevine through me that you have a book. He was like, well, I have to have him back on my show to promote our books. So I'm gonna be open the invitation. I gave him your information. I think he's added you on LinkedIn. Awesome. We're going to try to get you back on here so you guys can promote your books. I know he's over, he's on a European cruise right now writing another book. So
nice.
Definitely want to get you guys connected on there, get you back on the network at some point in time, and we'll do it again and have some fun on another one of the shows on the platform. But Pat, you know how I typically end this, man. I always throw it over to you. Anyone you'd like to thank, anything that you're working on that you'd like to let the people know, let them know your social media sites, anything else you want to say, Pat, the time is yours, my friend.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen. Hey, as always, appreciate the time with you, man. You always ask great questions. It's a great interview, and I'll come back anytime, and we love talking baseball. So appreciate that. If folks want to reach out, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. You can find me both of those places. And as always, man, just appreciate the time with you, and hope this continues to be a great success for you.
It's going to be, my friend. Actually have someone actually believes in me. Hell, he left me in charge of his company while he goes on a European cruise. I think I'm in good hands this time.
Awesome, man.
But it's always a pleasure to talk with you, Pat. I guess looking in the back, it looks like I have to have you back on during the beginning of the football season to make fun of your Cowboys.
There you go. Yeah, and I got to apologize for that. Look, I'm not a Cowboys fan, but that's got a couple of special signatures. And Roger Staubach.
Listen, I would not be upset with you about that. Listen, they had some great. I say it all the time. Listen, we absolutely loathe the Cowboys, but we respect and know what greatness is.
I appreciate
someone's going to offer me an Emmitt Smith autograph. Guess what? I'm going to take it. He's one of the top 10 running backs of all time. Same thing goes if you got a Michael Irvin. Listen, man, he's a special player. I know obviously his career ended here in Philadelphia due to that veteran saving gravel they were playing on. But I mean, listen, we do know what greatness is. We're not that blind to what goes on. I do think our team has a good chance of if they keep healthy and keep everything together over the next few years, we can definitely take a run at creating our own, multiple championships here in this era. I know Cowboys fans like to discredit our earlier championships because they weren't Super Bowls. I still think it's the silliest thing I've ever heard. They're like, oh, you guys still have a couple more championships to win. I'm like, actually, we don't. We stopped the original Packers from doing a three-peat. We stopped Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes from doing their own three-peats as well. I think this franchise is pretty well off, and we did win back-to-back championships in the 40s. They were championships. You can't take that away, regardless if it's a Super Bowl or not. They're championships.
No doubt, man.
I don't get why we only count half of history. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, there's no doubt. You guys have something special there with the Eagles. And
I think they are a special team. They got a lot of special guys on there. I think when everything's said and done, there's going to be multiple Hall of Famers on that team as well. What we've seen out of them over the last 15, 20 years, I think it's going to happen. We'll see some of them wear their golden jackets and be immortalized in NFL's Hall of Fame. But we'll see how it all plays out over the next year or so. We're definitely going to have you back on here again, Pat. Appreciate your time this evening, my friend, and go enjoy the rest of your night, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate you, man. Take care.
Have a good one, Pat. All right, everyone. That was the one and only Pat Combs. Another fun episode here. 188 stitches here. I won't be back next week. Scott should be back from his vacation. He'll be retaking over the reins here for 108. This is Baseball Talk. I was blessed to have Pat on. I might have another guest surprise for Scott when he gets back for 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. You guys are going to have to make sure you're locked in and tuned in to what's going on here in the channel. So if you haven't already, and I don't know why you haven't, please make sure you like, subscribe, and show love to the YouTube channel here at the South Florida Tribune. Make sure you guys are following us on all your other platforms as well. Facebook, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, whatever it is. Make sure you guys are showing us some love. A fun interview. We'll continue to have fun here on the network. I will be back tomorrow for Inside the Pigskin, and we're going to have a fun round table for that one. Make sure you're tuned in. And I have an analyst guest popping on the Fan in the End with me and Ben this week. So, guys, we got plenty of stuff coming this last week as Scott is away playing with Candy. Still stay locked in. Still make sure you're tuning into what we're doing here on the South Florida Tribune Media Network. Other than that, I'm Steve. This is another fun one. Make sure you guys are showing Pat some love, too, on his socials. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out, my friends.